one of the big problems is that religion has been marginalized in the previous regimes. Tunisia could have invested. We have the Zitouna University, which was a famous center for Islamic scholarship over centuries, and they could have invested into this university in a sense of continuing the tradition of Zitouna, improving, so to say, the scholarship on Islam. What we have now is basically a dominance of different Salafi ideologies, which is not just due to the fact that they might be appealing, but rather due to the fact that we don't have an appealing alternative philosophy and scholarship in Islam. The marginalization of religion has made it very difficult then to be in a process where there would have been an open discussion and deliberation over religion within the Tunisian society. And when you close this space, what happens is it becomes clandestine. And then when religion becomes clandestine and radical, it's always the voices that are the loudest and the most radical that become the most prominent one. And what you see is then a continuing, so to say, spiral of radicalization with Tunisian fighters, foreign fighters as they are called. We have to differentiate between two different movements. There has been the first wave of people joining the wars in Libya and later in Syria. And here that was quite puzzling, because in contrast to what a lot of people had thought, it was not, so to say, people from poor neighborhood or with a low level of education or so on. It was quite actually the contrast. People from the middle class, usually with university education and so on. They nonetheless feel disenfranchised in the Tunisian society. They think of themselves having earned a more prominent position, let's say, in the Tunisian society, and they saw the possibility in having such a cause to give a new sense to their life, a new value to their life. And also what was attractive for them is that it was clear, due to their level of education, that they would also occupy very high positions usually in these groups, leadership positions. The second wave that we see now, and which is basically a wave that comes with the emergence of ISIS, is a completely different group of Tunisians. And these are mainly Tunisians coming from rather poor neighborhoods, very marginalized in society, very young people, and who have actually no perspective for the future. And so first they are obviously prone to radicalization, but there is the motivation for them to go to Syria and Iraq is not one of going to fight and come back to Tunisia. It's really a migration movement. They go to Syria and to Iraq because they see there a future for their life. Why? Because now within ISIS, when they join ISIS, they gain some positions where suddenly they yield power. If, let's say, they are part of the Islamic police, they are not just fighters, they have roles in the society there, roles that are giving them power and that are giving them a position that they would otherwise in Tunisia never be able to attain. And I think this is something we have to understand. The phenomena that we have in Tunisia is very similar to the phenomenon we have in Europe, where we also see that it's basically young men that feel completely marginalized and disenfranchised in Europe, and who see a possibility with ISIS to gain a new value for their life, importance, and to have a role and power. In terms of the numbers, we should be a bit careful, because it's not at all clear how those numbers have been established. And for example, if you look in the social networks at the so-called databases of martyrs, of people who have been killed in Syria and Iraq, you notice that there are far less Tunisians in percentages compared to the numbers of people who are allegedly in Syria and Iraq. So it's not quite clear why we have this discrepancy, but we might be more careful with those numbers.